Members, we're all set. Members,
Ladies report, you do it for me.
mics are
I can
on.
go right up.
Members, mics are on.
Angela's here, maybe he could do it.
And if you do all their hours, you get total ones.
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, February 5th, 2018 to order. We will begin with the singing of the national anthem. Councillor Papp will lead us, and I would ask all who are able to rise. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First item of business is the adoption of the agenda. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the agenda for the February 5th, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Next is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any councillors have any disclosures they need to talk about?
None, Mr. Mayor.
None,
Okay,
Mr.
there are
Mayor.
none, and I have none. Can that be so noted? Now we have a series of presentations this evening, and it's great to, you're probably wondering, what are these boards doing here? What is this about? So it's wonderful that we have some acknowledgements of generosity in our community for fundraising. And we're so pleased that some representatives and some individuals who have pledged support for the community center and given donations are here, and we're going to acknowledge them. I'm going to go down to the podium to speak briefly about each of the individuals and companies that we're going to be honoring this evening. And then they're going to say a few words about their gift and the reason why they're giving to the community center. And then we're going to turn over the board. And so without further ado, I'm going to do that. So thank you. First on the list is a service club in our community that has been serving our community for 65 or more years. They are also known as the motto makers. They are the ones that designated the motto for Lions International, and that motto is "We Serve." And they are the largest service club in the world. And we are so delighted that they have embraced this project. You recognize them because of their activities. They just started a Slider Fest this year, and which was a wonderful event. And I believe it's through those proceeds that they're going to be donating to the community center. So I'd like to invite, on behalf of the Fawn Hill Lions Club, Jake Diltz, Kathy Burkout-Bossy, Robert Youngblood to come forward and say a few words. Why don't we give them a round of applause? As they just stand, right in here somewhere. There's the microphone.
The Fawn Hill Lions, we are excited to be sponsoring the elevator at the Pelham Community Center. We already affectionately calling it the Lions Lift. The Community Center realized it is a community dream It's been 25 years in the making. We're thrilled the contribution and given the lift to the entire process. The Pelham Community Center will serve as a vibrant, will serve our growing community for generations to come. The Lions have a long history of helping fund the recreation needs of the town. We're proud to be part of the Legacy Project. The Fond-Hill Lions are our motto makers of Lions International. Our Lions motto is "We serve," and a part of our DNA. We look forward to housing and servicing many sports and community events, activities that will happen at the Pelham Community Center in years to come. The Pelham Community Center will serve as a gathering place for people of all ages, bring us together to stronger, healthier, and more connected community.
And
You didn't even ask me.
You want the, do you
Yeah,
want
no,
the?
never mind, the deputy's gonna sit up here.
Okay.
there we go, the lobby elevator, the Lions Lift. I think we're gonna have to change the name for the Lions Lift.
Everybody's a little closer together, Mayor Dave. You're good. There we go. That's close together. Should be fine for that kind of money. Looking right at the end of this lens, okay, guys?
Lions is better than.
And home porch is over here. Right here.
Sorry, couldn't help it.
All right.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Community center. Exactly, it's for the community. Thank you. Next, we have some representatives of a group that is coming home to Pelham. They started in Pelham just over 50 years ago as a centennial project. And they are very excited, as I'm sure you'll hear, about coming home to Pelham. And I heard, maybe you can talk about this, what you just told me before council, about something happening today. We are so delighted that the Pelham Raiders minor lacrosse team is donating to the community center and also coming home. So I'd like to invite Ben Chambers and Drew Fertney to come forward, please.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
I can talk.
We need a catchy name for our change room now. We haven't thought about that,
We
so
got that for you.
one step at a time.
Well, the news today is that we formally got notified by the OLA that the name change has gone through, and that our boundaries are set, and we are now officially, I guess, in the OLA's eyes, the Pelham Raiders. As far as our donation goes, we sat down as an organization a few months ago and looked at what the town of Pelham has done and how you guys are investing in the future of the community. That was really something that drew us back to the community and saying, you guys really want to help out with the community center and so forth. So we want to know what we could do. And we did. We donated for the larger dressing room, the multi dressing room. So that was something that we found, if you guys can invest in it, so can we. And it shows our membership that we're here for the long haul and that we're excited about being here.
All right.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it, thank you. Tiffany's gonna turn this over for us.
Except not paid as much.
Close together. Smile a little bit. And looking right up there at the end of the lens. And one more. I just came from the gym. I'm pretty hungry. All right, one more, guys, and really try and smile about it. I know it's unpleasant, but we're almost done. Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, and I think Sam wanted to take a photo. Thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. Welcome home. Now, this next donor self-identified in the sense of, in the other cases, maybe some people have talked to them and said, what do you guys think about donating? But this next donor knocked on our door, which is very, very impressive. Lives in town, and he has a very strong business in Niagara. Skycom Solutions, Serge Paquin.
Thank you. Mayor Augustine, councilors, fellow citizens, I'm Serge Paquin. I own Skycom Solutions, an IT company in St. Catharines, but I live in Font Hill. I've lived here with my family for the last 16 years. I'm passionate about hockey, and when I saw that the arena was being built, I just knew that I had to donate and be involved in it. So we're excited to be one of the sponsors of the dressing room. I have 2 small kids in hockey, so we're going to get hopefully many years of use out of the new facility. So we're very excited to be part of the excitement.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
Maybe I can try this out. Try and get different councils in the back. You just move closer to me. Sure. Stay where you are. So like, a little closer. Perfect. And so together, guys. And a little slower with the signs. So you're not just floating heads. Perfect. Smile. Looking sharp. Thank you. Perfect.
And now the next series.
Great, thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. And last this evening, but certainly not least, we have some representatives from a very successful new business that started a couple years ago. Young families. They are professionals in our community, and I know we were all excited when they opened, and I think we're even more excited that you have embraced the community and are donating back to the community. So Fertney Chrysler LLP Chartered Professional Accountants, Drew Fertney and Bill Chrysler are here. Let's give them a round of applause.
I guess I'll
I
start
better start. I let Ben do all the heavy lifting before. So just on behalf of Bill and I, and Bill might have some things to say. Really excited about this. We both grew up here. We're born and raised in Pelham. Moved away to work and then came back to raise our kids here. So you guys have made a great investment in the town. And I have 2 kids. Bill has a few more, and we're really excited that our kids are going to be able to spend a lot of time in the community center for many years. So thank you. We're happy to do just this small little piece to help out.
That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to say it's fantastic. I have 4 little ones, so it's probably going to be a second home for us with everything going on. But couldn't be happier to be part of this. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna hose in on this
Okay,
one.
please do.
I wanted to talk to you about, very quickly, about karma. Bill Chrysler Jr. was my late Valerie's godmother and sister of Counselor Lane. It's kind of ironic that in about 2 weeks, it'll be the 7th year of her passing. And she will be smiling, watching this donation. We remember little Bill when he was growing up. And everybody thought he wouldn't, he's a hell of a hockey player. Now he's a hell of a accountant. And I can't be so proud of you, Bill, and your firm, of what you have done. These guys are extraordinary. So, thank you so much for the donation.
Center, actually, right here. Try and bury him up a bit. A little closer, a little closer. Bring it on then. I won't bite. I'll just take your picture. All right, right there is perfect. And just big smiles looking at the end of the lens. The politicians should be used to it.
Forget.
All right, guys, I'm just going to take one more, okay? Very best. Big smiles. Looking right at the end of the lens, you can smile better than that, Peter. I know you can.
Oh, the Eagles won.
All right, that easy, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. So before you go, we have, council has a special announcement.
Wait, what now?
We have a little announcement. Here it is. That was a she's okay, I think. So congratulations and thank you. Obviously, things like that happen because of the generosity of the community. And so on behalf of council, we certainly appreciate the donors that came here this evening, the donors that we've already announced back in the spring and in the fall. And we know that there's going to be a few others that were going to be highlighted that may not have been able to be here this evening.
Can we redo this in front of,
Martin wants to redo this in front of the...
Well, I would too, actually. 'Cause
Okay.
this is
for the
one for
newspaper?
Okay.
Going to
Down and just stand in front.
Remember your order. Pass it up, please.
Sorry.
Sure, all the zeros are in order.
All right, guys. That's right. Just like that. Make sure everybody just it's really bunched together so the signs are almost touching.
All the men got zeros. I don't know.
Perfect.
Just for the record, this is the first time I've had a photograph taken with the numbers, just so you know.
I thought you were a marathon guy. I always had the number.
The other picture had several numbers.
Hi, everybody. Looking here, perfect. Now we're gonna just take one more with the flash on. Perfect. And just one more, get a little more depth to it. Everybody looking right here, big smiles. All right, you're good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to the community. Thank you so much. You want to change it around? Thank you very much.
Have a good meeting, okay?
Okay, thanks.
You know how difficult it is for me to get back in my seat?
They have no consideration at all.
I know. Allow me to take this opportunity to pour water.
Here we go, yeah.
So thank you for the latitude, folks. We don't normally do that in our council meetings. And the clerk is here getting ready for our next presentation. So we have 3 other presentations. So I'd like to invite Bill Gibson, who's the chair of the Pelham Community Center Oversight Committee, to give us a presentation on the status update of where we are with the community center. And Bill Sheldon is also here. He's a dedicated member of the Oversight Committee as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Chair, councilors, fellow civil servants, and public and taxpayers. Wow, 1.5 million, eh? Good stuff.
Getting there.
We got more money to spend. Just a second here. Whoop,
Mark, would you be able? Oh,
there we go.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, As you're aware, the Pelham Oversight Committee, or the Community Oversight Committee, has been working for about 1.5 years with the contractor, and we meet with them monthly. And from time to time, we come in and report to you to where we are. The last meeting we had was the middle of January, and the last financial report we had was up to the end of December. So the figures I'm going to give you tonight are up to the end of December. And we will be back to you probably the end of March, the last council meeting in March, and I think I'll be able to tell you down to pennies where we are with the overall costs.
Great.
So, as you're aware, our mandate is to keep an eye on the project costs. The schedule is well managed. The Pelham Community Center is meeting the cost schedule objectives, and the cost and schedule risks are being reasonably anticipated and managed. And the people that are listed there, including my new friend, Mr. Sheldon, we hope in the slides ahead to demonstrate to you that we're trying to meet those objectives. At this point right now, there is 3 tender packages, and all 3 of them have been tendered. All of the sub-trades in tender package 2 and tender package 3 have agreed to the schedule, which is substantial completion July 1st, and they've all signed on to do that.
Very good.
So we are 100%
June 1st?
tendered.
Is that July 1st or June 1st?
Sorry, June 1st.
June 1st.
Yep, I'm just, getting ahead of myself here. One of our big benchmarks was to have the building completely enclosed by Christmas. We were enclosed about a week ahead of schedule. And what this means to us is that the interior of the building is climate controlled. Now it's using industrial heaters. And we are in the position right now to be able to complete the drywall. It'll dry naturally, and the painting and the other things like that. Councillor Kersey and I had taken some interested people through last Tuesday, and we actually noticed a couple of sub-trades are actually working in shorts. That's how warm it is in there. So anyway, we are able to control the climate, and that means that we'll be able to meet our internal schedule as well.
Great.
Ball construction has got to be, Bill's worked in commercial and I've worked in government construction, and both Bill and I agree that Ball Construction is one of the best contractors we've ever had to work with. They're very accommodating, they're very risk adverse. The gentleman that's their site manager is near and dear to Councillor Gary's and Bill's my heart. He was giving a contractor the other day heck for not cleaning up his footprints after he'd walked into a construction site, so you can tell what the state of the place is. We are now at 97% of all contracts signed. Now, we have tendered all 3, and we're at 97%, and the last little contract will be signed the middle of February. So when I come back in March, we will be able to tell you where we are dollars and cents wise. Okay? So some of the milestones, you've seen this before. We're in pretty good shape. What's going on in the next few weeks, month, the basketball court, the material for the wood floor is on site, and it's climatizing. We're waiting for the concrete to lose its moisture content so that when we put it down, it won't cause the floor to expand. So this takes a little while. They're at about, I think they told me the other day, they're at about 45% humidity on there, and they're trying to get it down around 20. As I said, the building enclosure is done. They're doing drywall right now. They're just finishing off the miscellaneous metal, which is the railings in front of all the seats in the tiered arena. And the main stairwell's in. The next big thing in the arena is they're going to pour the cap on the floor areas in the seats where you walk. And as soon as they get that done, then the seating will be put in place with armrests and that sort of stuff. The only little fly in the ointment we have right now is the interior block work is pretty well finished, but we're having trouble getting tradespeople. There's so much construction going on in the peninsula, but we're able to work around that, so that's just, you know, kind of a balancing type thing. As far as the money is concerned, we've debenture 1 was $9 million, debenture 2 was 12. The PCC reserve is at 951. Donations, now this was put together a few weeks ago, so it's at 288,500, and I guess we're a little higher right now. What we've been doing with the debentures is they're put into a high yield account, and we've actually made $49,000 on just the debentures sitting there. The total amount of money we're working with, this was like to the end of December, was 22 million. Expenditures as of December 31st was 21 million, so we've got about 827,000 that we haven't spent yet, which will be spent, so we're okay there. This is our updated bar graph. It shows what we had planned on our expenditures and what we actually spent, and you'll see there's a few spikes in there. The blacks are a little higher because we got ahead of schedule, and that was because last winter we got a free winter out of it. I'd hate to think what would have happened this year if we tried pouring concrete and footings and stuff. So we got a little bit ahead, and you can see that as we progress along, the red and black bars get pretty harmonious until we're right at the very end, and we're still forecasting that amount of money. At this point, I would like to say to you that we are going to bring the community center in on time, which is substantial completion July 1st.
June 1st.
And we feel pretty confident, sorry, June 1st. And we feel very confident that we're going to bring this in on budget.
Great.
And the interesting thing right now is the to-do list at the community center is getting shorter and the days are getting longer. So by June 1st, we will have one at 0 and the other one at full sunlight. So there you are. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. These are just some of the photographs of them doing the floor, which was quite an interesting process. And that blue thing in the back is our compressor unit for the chillers for the floor system. And it was craned into place about 3-4 weeks ago. So anyway.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and certainly we appreciate your efforts. You're volunteering at this, and so is Mr. Sheldon and Councillor Kersey overseeing this. And you know, it was something that the community wanted when and council wanted when the community center was approved. Make sure that there was oversight on the project. You're doing an excellent job. So thank you very much for bringing us an update. Wonder if members of council might have a question, and we have Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. First of all, congratulations on a job that's being well done. It's very nice to see that this is happening, and we're starting to get actually emails that are very much on a positive side, and people looking very much forward to this as opposed to some of the stuff that's happened in the past. So I think the general feeling out there is very positive. One thing that I would like to have included in some reports is the number of jobs that this created, because in fact it was a substantial project and a very important one to the town and to the people of the town. And also if we could look at the number of jobs that were created and the number of people that were working on this thing from start to finish, that would be I think a valuable tidbit of information that we could share with everybody, because that I feel is a very important thing economically as well. So if that could be in the future about a bill, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much. Councillor Papp, you had a
Yes, very
question?
quickly, thank you, congratulations. It's always nice to see projects coming in on time, on budget, and hopefully that it'll be embraced, which I think it'll all definitely be embraced by the community. Can you just, for the sake of the public's interest and for my own, what do you mean by substantially complete?
Substantially complete will be that the building structure, the envelope, the finishes, the mechanical systems, the electrical, sprinkler, will be able to be handed over on July 1st, or sorry, June 1st. And what that means is that prior to that, we have a commissioning agent that is going to work with Ball, probably starting about the middle of, probably beginning of May, and going through the systems. Of course, the chiller has to be inspected by the provincial government. So we're anticipating that for the period in June, we'll be basically handing over the systems and training the town staff that are going to run it. And we'll be in a position that those things will actually run when we start to do that.
Thank you. And then Councilor Durley was right on the mark as far as picking up not only construction jobs, but also the whole site itself. What it's done is to create employment and economic opportunity. So thank you again.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Gibson? Councillor Kersey? Go
Thank
ahead,
you,
sir.
Mr. Mayor. I'd
Yeah.
just like to make
As
a
a member of the
comment
committee,
and
absolutely.
and a personal thank you to these two gentlemen that are here. Their expertise that they have so willingly given should be greatly appreciated by the community. Both these gentlemen have worked in construction and procurement. They know the ins and outs and the pitfalls, and they've given of their time and expertise freely and have done a wonderful job for the community. So guys, my hat's off to you, and thank you from the community.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, gentlemen.
Just as a note, I was talking to Mr. Ottaway the other day, and we actually have people that want to book weddings and use the facility. And
Great.
we actually had people, was it, Darren, was it in June? Somebody wanted to hold a wedding there, and we were just a little worried. But as you can see, talking to Mr. Ottaway, that there is starting to book other than the ice time for
That's
it.
great.
So there is some pent-up demand. And I was told the other day that there's a group of individuals who are just dying to get onto the exercise track. So they've been training down at the old arena and walking around the boards to get in shape. So I think we built it, and they're going to come use it. So
That's
thank
great.
you very much.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your work. Thank you. Thank you. I do have a motion, and it has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the council receive the presentation from Mr. Bill Gibson, Chair, Pelham Community Centre Oversight Committee for information. I'll call that question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much again for your presentation. Now we move to Mr. Ferguson. He is here representing Deloitte and the 2017 audit plan. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you for having me.
Whenever you're here, you always have to follow some really, really great news.
I was going to say that.
You can still say that.
So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, so thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
So my purpose here today is to provide you with our audit plan for the 2017 year that's just ended December 31st. The good news is that there have been no changes in accounting standards. There have been no changes in auditing standards. So this audit plan looks quite similar to what you would have seen in prior years. For those of you that did a detailed look at it year over year, you would have noticed one change in terms of our risk areas, and I'll highlight that in just a minute. So if I think I can do this. Yep. I'll just highlight a few things to council. So just in terms of overall thoughts, this audit plan is to provide you with an opinion on the fairness of the presentation of your financial statements for the year just ended. You can see our team members are the same, with myself being the engagement partner, and Chris Lapointe will be back as the senior manager, which is always good. In terms of our audit approach, over the next couple of slides, we've just tried to explain our audit approach in a few bullet points. So first of all, in terms of significant events, we're not aware of anything that's happened that will impact our audit of the town in terms of the procedures that we'll perform. That's not to say that things haven't happened. Obviously, you've issued debentures and there's lots of activity, but we're used to that in terms of municipal audits. So we'll look at those things in due course. In terms of materiality, obviously, we're not on site every day auditing every transaction that happens in the town, so we'll continue to perform our audit with the concept of materiality in mind, using sample sizes and thresholds and all those things in accordance with the Canadian audit standards. What may be of interest to you is our reporting threshold, which is 5% of our materiality. So it's a very low number. So if we identified a misstatement, whether or not it's corrected by management, we'll bring it to your attention as part of our year-end results presentation. If I flip the page, there's a big box here on fraud risk. This is not meant to raise any alarm bells or concerns. Canadian audit standards require us as the town's external auditors to consider the risk of fraud during the course of our audit of your financial statements. As we have in prior years, we'll send an email around to councillors to ask for your thoughts on these matters. We'll also have discussions with management, and we'll be performing some procedures in and around these items as well. Of the audit risks, they're largely the same as prior years, as you would expect. Two of them have little asterisks beside them. The first one is around revenue and deferred revenue amounts, and the other one on the next page I'll get to in a minute is around management override of controls. That is because Canadian audit standards presume a risk of fraud in those two areas. So we deem those to be significant risks and do a fair amount of testing in and around those areas. If I flip the page, the one new risk that you wouldn't have seen in prior years is just around internal controls, and this is entirely because of the transition in the treasurer role over the course of the year. So what we'll do as part of our audit this year is we'll test the internal controls before the transition, during the transition, and after the transition. So 3 separate phases, if you will, to make sure that the controls were working throughout the course of the year, which we're providing you opinion on. And if anything happened over the course of that time, we'll bring it to your attention as part of our year-end results. The last piece that I would highlight is just on the next page around management override of controls. This is the other significant risk I referred to in a minute. Again, it's required under Canadian audit standards. A couple of things that we'll be looking at here is a test of journal entries. We'll be looking for non-standard entries, big numbers, round numbers, things that are prepared or posted by people not usually involved in the process, things right at year end, right at quarter end, perhaps something that was posted on a holiday or a weekend. We have all kinds of things that we'll look at, and we'll get what we call it a dump of all of the journal entries that were entered over the course of the entire year. First of all, to make sure that we have a complete sample of all the entries, and we test to make sure that we have all the entries, and that's a lot easier said than done to make sure that we have the full sample, and then from there we'll do our tests. One of the other things that we'll do is a look-back test as well, and that's where, again, the standard requires us to consider the risk of fraud, and what we're doing is taking a look at any estimates that were made as part of last year's financial statements to see what the outcome of those estimates were. The idea being to get a feeling as to whether or not there's a bias to overstate or understate, whatever it may be. We've never identified anything in the past at the town, but we're required to perform that test on an annual basis. The appendices are pretty straightforward. Appendix 1 is a copy of our audit approach. We're required to provide it to you, so I'm going to keep things moving along and skip right on through that. Appendix 2, over the course of 2 pages, we've got a list of our communication requirements. Again, they're directly out of Canadian audit standards, and as part of our year-end results presentation, we'll get back to you on each of these items. The last piece is a financial reporting update. There are some changes in accounting standards that will be coming and impacting the town for next year. So some of these were effective on April 1st, 2017. So any of your government-controlled organizations, like hospitals, school boards, things like that, they'll be triggered for that for these items this year. Given that your municipality with a December year end, these will impact your 2018 financial statements. Okay. So we'll talk about these this time next year, but I don't anticipate any of these to have any big impact on your financial statements or the disclosures therein. So with that, I'm going to propose to stop and take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson. Do members of council have any questions for our auditor? Councillor Papp?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson. Yes, it has been quite a challenging year, to say the least. I just was curious as to know how much and what part of what was done by KPMG would be part of your review, if any, or is it considered none? That's what I want to make clear. So there's not some anticipation that there's going to be any sort of integration of that. So you do the audit separately of our own function. That was done as a separate part.
Yeah, it's not
We'll
within
make
the
that
scope
very
of our
clear.
work at all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferguson.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Mr. Ferguson, last year, I think it was June that you presented the final report. There's no comment here about timing, so just wondering about the timing for when the audit. Is it around the same time as what you're sort of considering?
Yeah, we considered moving up the time of the field work when we perform the audit. We worked with Teresa and Charlotte on that. We ended up landing on pretty much exactly the same timing as last year
Right.
to when we would come and perform the field work. I'd expect we might be able to be ready in May. It's really just when we get all the loose ends tied up with management.
Okay.
And if not May, then June, and that's pretty typical for a municipality.
Right, okay. Well, it's always been difficult with the airport and with the hydro and all those other assets to take a look at it, but it was June last year, so it's good to hear that we're on the same timeframe or earlier. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? There being none, it has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the council receive the presentation from Mr. Trevor Ferguson, Deloitte, respecting the 2017 Audit Service Plan for information. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you. The clerk is changing over the slide presentation, but I do want to say some comments about this next presentation. Council will recall that when we received, as we often receive, information from the Niagara region, Nancy, there's something, thank you. Back in the fall, we had some questions about Pelham and the impacts on Pelham regarding Niagara Regional Housing. And it emanated out of their Q3 report. So I'm very pleased that we have a full group of representatives from Niagara Regional Housing here this evening. They've been very patient with all of the presentations. And I'm going to kick this off by introducing Councillor Henry D'Angela, who is the chair of the Niagara Regional Housing, and he's going to bring some greetings to us and also introduce his team members.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I just want to make one comment, though. I wanted to commend you and your council for moving forward with the Recreation Center. It's a great way of improving your community, and we saw all the exciting stuff that's happening here. So it's not just improving your community; it improves Niagara as a whole. So you're part of the piece that makes Niagara better. So I'm commending you on that. And I just want to give you a little brief thing. My son plays hockey in Thorold, and he can't wait to play in the new facilities. So it's not only Pelham residents that are going to benefit from it; other residents that are coming in from other communities in Niagara are going to benefit.
And he plays or has played in the current Pelham Arena, and he's ready to give that one up, is he?
Yes. On a side note, unfortunately, they were playing in the district playoffs. They played Pelham, and they lost in overtime 4-3. Pelham won. It was in Fort Erie because the district playoffs were there. So congratulations to Pelham. I hope you guys win the districts and then move on and win the OMHAs. So
Thank you.
Now
Thanks
that
for
Thorold's out of it.
Thanks for your kind comments. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Please add some time on because I don't want to take
Oh,
away from Donna,
we're
but,
pretty good with the time element, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of Niagara Regional Housing Board, I'd like to thank the invitation for coming this evening and to present and answer any questions that you have. And I think this stemmed from one of the third quarter reports that was sent off to local municipalities. You'll see from the following presentation, Donna Wosheshin here, she's the interim CEO of the corporation, will have a great deal of, will show you that there's a great deal of need for affordable housing here in Niagara. But I'm optimistic that things are moving forward. For years, advocates have been calling for a national housing strategy, and just recently, the federal government announced the new housing strategy, which is excellent. While many of the details of the strategy have yet to be disclosed, it's certainly good news for NRH, Niagara Regional Housing, and we're going to take advantage of any opportunities that we have working with our local community partners to move forward on that. So looking forward as the details come out. We've begun numerous initiatives that are helping to reduce the wait list, one of the biggest concerns that we have, and Donna's going to explain some of the stuff that's happening there. And then I'd also like to mention that tomorrow is Tuesday, I don't know, which is a long-running national campaign to raise funds and awareness for long-term solutions to homelessness. I know St. Catharines is having an event. I'm not sure if Pelham is.
I was planning on going to St. Catharines.
Okay, excellent. So just for everyone, that's tomorrow morning. It's the mayor's breakfast at the downtown in the Market Square, and I think it's from 7 to 9. So hopefully we'll see many people there supporting the cause. And of course, affordable housing is one of the key solutions to homelessness that we're trying to work our way through. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Donna Washashin, Niagara Regional Housing's interim CEO, to tell you a little bit more about affordable housing, Niagara Regional Housing, and the wait list, and how we can dramatically reduce it in the coming years. So I'd like to introduce her here, and I'll stick around for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Councillor D'Angelo.
Thanks, Henry. Good evening, Mayor Augustine and Council. Thank you for inviting my team to Pelham this evening. We're here to talk about my favorite subject, which is housing, and the wait list. I left all my notes on my desk that had all the big words and legislation and everything I was going to press upon you, but I guess I'll have to wait for another time for that. I'm just going to wing it. So by way of background, and our Niagara Regional Housing is the administrator of affordable housing on behalf of Niagara Region. We were created in 2002 when the province downloaded social housing to the municipalities, and we are currently legislated by the Housing Services Act 2011. We're governed by a board of directors with representation from both council and the community. So the key services that Niagara Regional Housing delivers, we're the administrator of the Access Center and the centralized wait list for subsidized housing in Niagara. We do the management and operation of 2,751 public housing units. When we have legislated oversight of 60 social housing providers, which is over 3,600 nonprofit and cooperative housing units. We also have approximately 750 rent geared to income units with private landlords that we have agreements with. And we also deliver various social housing programs. So here is a list of the legislated programs that Niagara Regional Housing delivers. And the legislated programs are all the downloaded programs. So these all came during devolution. They all have service level standards tied to them. And this is the main programs that have rent geared to income housing attached to them. So they're the public housing, the nonprofit providers, and the rent supplement programs that I just mentioned. So since 2006, the province and the federal government have come up with a whole boutique of different kind of programs. They keep throwing at us and giving us timelines to deliver these programs. We're currently under operation of a couple of the investment in affordable housing extension, which goes till 2020, and the social infrastructure fund, where we have funding that's going until 2019 currently. These programs, the various programs under there, we have housing allowances. So it's not RGI. It's a set amount that's given to people. It's less of a deep need, but it makes housing more affordable to those people as they wait on the wait list. So they're on the wait list waiting for rent geared to income housing. We give them a little bit of subsidy to help them out so they can spend the money, on clothing and food and other things. We have the Housing First program, which is a partnership which teams units with supports. So mental health, drug addiction, different support services. We have partnerships with community services to provide those units. Niagara Renovates is a program for which helps with accessibility and repairs to low-income homeowners. We have the Welcome Home Niagara program, which offers a down payment assistance to people who meet certain eligibility criteria. We recently took on a pilot of the Survivors of Domestic Violence Portable House Benefit, housing benefit, where we were able to supply about 40 units for people who are escaping abuse. And we also have new development. We have in 2018, we have a $53 million budget. Our main sources of revenue is $13.9 million in rent, $11.7 million from federal and provincial grants, and approximately $27.4 million comes from the levy. There's a tiny bit that comes from reserves. And then these are the various the various expenses we have. As you can see, the big one is our housing provider subsidy, which is 23.7 million. So the centralized wait list, at the end of 2017, there were 5,001 households waiting for rent geared to income housing in Niagara. It doesn't represent a true need in Niagara because we do have long wait lists. There are people who get discouraged from applying for social housing when they realize they have so many years to wait to get in.
So it's higher.
It could be much higher, yes. Currently on the Pelham rent geared to income list, we have, on the centralized wait list, we have 244 seniors waiting for affordable housing in Pelham. As you can, here's our wait times from Niagara, and as you can see, depending on the type of unit, there's various length of time. It could be up to 16 years in Niagara Falls for a one-bedroom. But Pelham right now, it's about a 3-year. It's been approximately a 3-year wait for those people that are waiting on the wait list to get a seniors household in Pelham. Social housing in Pelham, our only provider pretty well of rent geared to income is the Pelham Nonprofit Housing Corporation. They currently have 22 tenants that who receive RGI assistance through the rent supplement program. So we just wanted to put an example of a typical person looking for, an applicant looking for housing. So we did an example with Sally, who has 2 young children, and she's looking for a place to call home in Pelham. Affordable housing should cost no more than 30% of monthly income. Sally's gross monthly income, say, is approximately $960. She's got a couple of jobs. She's trying to keep up to support her 2 children. The average market rent in Pelham for a 2-bedroom unit is $902. Affordable rent, if there was a program available in Pelham, would be 80% of the market, which would be $722. But that option is not available for Sally. Rent geared to income in Pelham, based on 30% of their income, would be $588. But that's not available in Pelham to Sally because we only have 1-bedroom senior units in Pelham. So in Niagara, we have the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan, which was required under the Housing Services Act. It's a 10-year plan that covers the continuum of housing, right from homelessness right up to home ownership. The 4 key priorities of the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan is to improve options to house people who do not have a home, expand supports to help people find and retain their homes, increase opportunities and options across the housing continuum, and improve the effectiveness of the housing system. This was approved by council. This action plan was approved by council in 2013. The Housing Services Act requires that a review be done after 5 years of the plan. So 2018, we are currently doing a review of the plan, and that will be brought to council this year. That will be updated for the next 5 years, and it will include targets this time. So there are many challenges in social housing, and as you can imagine, they're more complex, especially in the public housing where there's a higher concentration of poverty. But some of the challenges in social housing, there's mental health, addictions, family breakdown, we got victims of violence, hoarding behaviors, bed bug, cockroaches, aging population, aging facilities, capital deficits, and end of operating agreements. So addressing some of these challenges, we have partnerships with with many agencies, with different groups that we can work with, mental health groups, addiction, and that. We have multiple programs, especially in the owned units. We have community programs where we have the staff and resources to help deal with a lot of the challenges that we see in public housing. We have rationalization of properties, so that's where we look at different properties that we have right now, make sure we're not exceeding, if they are all aging, so we're not exceeding an expenditure of capital repairs, that we're making sure they're still viable to go forward. We're always looking for innovative financing. These three are new ideas that are coming up, and there's a lot of discussion around the tables right now about tiny houses, micro condos, and container houses. I actually went to see a container house. It's pretty cool. Housing First, again, that's the program where we work with community. We teamed up with community services, and we offer the unit. They offer the supports. And we have new development. One that's not here is the Victims of Domestic Violence Portable Rent Benefit. Again, that also helped us to address some of the challenges. So under new development, there's been a total of $59 million that's been invested in Niagara. That was to create 720 units of affordable housing. It comes to approximately $82,000 a unit. None of those units were in Pelham. A lot of the times, especially under the affordable housing program, when we had money to spend on new development and developers were asked to submit bids, at those times there were no bids from Pelham. And so I'm going to turn it over, and Henry's going to talk about the current new development at Carlton Street.
Yeah, I'm just going to speak briefly on the current development. This is part of our own unit portfolio. We did increase some units at Fitch Street in Welland, and we also built some at Broad Oak in Niagara Falls. That was a rehabilitation.
Great facilities, yeah.
So we have some new sites coming on. This one here is 527 Carlton Street. It's to be completed by 2018. It's going to be 5 stories, 85 units. Originally, it wasn't supposed to be as high, but we wanted to get as many units there as possible, and we're able to squeeze a little bit more funding in there. 64 one-bedroom, 8 two-bedroom, and 13 accessible units. Tenants are going to include seniors, adults, and families. Also, these are affordable market rents, so it's going to be 80% of the CMHC average market rent. So it's just helping those that need a little bit of a help. This is a new unit that's being built in St. Catharines. We haven't built there at all since it was downloaded from the province. And one of the things we've really learned, especially from the Fitch Street project in Welland, we have a really collaborative approach. We work with the local municipalities, we work with the local councillors, we work with the local residents. There's a committee that's set up, so we're all working together. There's several departments at the region, planning, their energy department, a few others, finance is there obviously, and then NRH provides quite a bit of members to this committee. So it's a very collaborative approach, working with the stakeholders and the partners to come up with one of the best products. And it's worked well at Fitch Street, and we've again modeled it after that project, and we're using it at Carlton Street. This is the schematic design of the building, what it's going to look like. And the nice thing with the committee, we have 2 residents that are on it. We work with them to make sure that it fits in with the community as best as possible, making sure it comes out exceptional. And then there's a current picture of what's going on right now. I believe the top floor is up subsequent to this picture, and the roof is being installed. So it's moving along quite rapidly, and we'd like to see people be moving in. Hopefully by the end of this year, they'll be in there. It's moving on target, it's on budget, and moving along. So speaking of capital projects, that's always a good thing to hear. It's on target and under budget right now. So that pretty well wraps the presentation up, and both of us can answer any of the questions that council has at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation and answering some of council's questions. And we'll see if council has some more questions for you. Thank you. I'm going to turn to Councillor Ribiak and then Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Just so you know, I was certainly one of the councillors here who was anxious to have this presentation, and had asked that as a follow-up to that quarterly report that maybe someone come and talk to us specifically about the area of concern that we probably hear about more often than not, and probably you do as well, and that's the management of the waiting list. what we get, what I get, I shouldn't speak for anyone else but myself, what I get anecdotally from people is, I'm on the waiting list, I've been on it for a long time, I don't know where I am on the waiting list, I see other people moving in, I don't know why. Based on your presentation, it's pretty clear that it's probably not a first-come, first-served system, but based on need.
It is chronological.
But maybe you can do two things for us. Number one, kind of explain that process a little bit. But second, something that I think we would find really helpful, that I would find really helpful, and that is, what kind of advice can we give people who have questions and want to know where they are on the waiting list and what they have to do to finally get housing that they are looking for?
Okay.
So I'll turn it over to you.
If you can help the counselor and.
Introduce Jeanette McKay. She's our manager of the Housing Access Unit.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette.
Okay, so the waiting list, it's very difficult to explain to people where they are on the list. Because when you apply for housing, you can choose up to 200 different communities to wait for. So that means that you'll be a different spot on every list. So that becomes very difficult for people to understand, because a lot of people think that there's just one list, and there isn't. So for example, in Pelham, there's a waiting list for Pelham nonprofit. And so someone on Pelham nonprofit's waiting list could also be on many other waiting lists in Niagara. So someone could be number 5 on Pelham's list, and 25 on another list, and 37 on a different list. And that gets really confusing for people. So it is a chronological system, slightly modified in terms of different priorities. So we have special priority, which is for victims of violence, and they always go to the top. And then we have overhoused and urgent, and then homeless applicants are offered 10% of vacancies. So as you can see, it gets rather complicated.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Just
So-
add that, just to help the situation a little bit. Someone could be on multiple lists because they may have a preference in being in St. Catharines. Say they live in Pelham, but their preference might be St. Catharines, but another option is Thorold. So
Right.
that's how they get on different
okay.
lists. They're looking for a unit, so they're able to put their names on several lists. That's why there's multiple lists, just to, hopefully that sort of expands on the question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate knowing that. Obviously, that's not something that I knew, and people who have said things to me have not indicated much of an understanding of all of that either. So I offer that to you as information. Maybe that's something that people can think about, how to change that. How about my other question? So if someone comes to me and says, you know, I'm living in a trailer, winter's coming, I've been on a list, can you help me? How do we help? What do we say? Where do we direct people?
Yeah, it's a challenge we hear every day. We will try to refer them out to various community agencies that can help them. We will make sure we have all their information. If they're homeless, we'll make sure that they're applying for homeless status.
Okay.
I think you're looking for like a contact number to call NRH. Is that what you're trying to?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, help us, help them. I mean, what do we say to people? What's the what is a contact number? But as I say, just help us, help them. I never know what to say to people who say, I've been on a waiting list and I'm getting frustrated because I see other people move ahead and I have a need. Gee, I don't know. I guess that's the region looking after it, and that's how they do it. I'm not sure that that's the right answer.
Yeah, to help the counselor help residents, can they call in? Is there somebody able to help them explain the waiting list?
Welcome to call Housing Access. We try to take our time with every person who calls to explain the process to them and try to uncomplicate a complicated business. So they can call us anytime, and we'll take our time to explain all that to them.
Okay, and that's that number that's here on the pamphlet you gave us.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again for the presentation. It's a challenging enterprise that you're involved in. I can see that, and there's probably no simple answer, but if we can help in any way, we want to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King and then Councillor Kersey. Councillor King.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to back up in your presentation. You mentioned that there were 244 people waiting for housing in Pelham. Can you just clarify whether that is 244 Pelham residents waiting for affordable housing in Pelham, or is that number possibly on this list of maybe they're looking and waiting for 3 or 4 or 5 different areas, Pelham just being one of them?
So the list, from what I understand, Pelham has approximately 4 or 5 residents on the list. The rest all come from other communities. And a lot of them look, probably because it's a quicker housing in Pelham than in most areas. So a lot of them may put their name on the Pelham list. It might not be where they want to go to, but it might be quicker for them to get what they need.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, I'm sorry, I'm just confused by that. So of the, if I might, Councillor Kersey, so of the 244, there's only a handful that are specifically from
Currently
Pelham.
residing in Pelham.
And, but folks are on the list because you showed us that one chart on the slideshow saying that it's a 3-year wait for seniors, and it's higher for others. Is that essentially what you're saying? Okay, all right, thank you. That's helpful. Councillor King, anything further? No?
Well, I could, but I won't.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right,
I'll
thank
give
you.
others an opportunity.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions, if I might. Part of the first question I was going to ask was about the 244 seniors. Is there a need that has been identified outside of the senior affordable housing loop? Do we have people on the waiting list looking for housing in Pelham that are not seniors?
We can't identify people when you don't have stock for it. So our list, we can only put you on a list for what's available. So if somebody's looking for a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, we don't have a list in Pelham, so there's no need in Pelham because there's no list to go on.
I see. So we have no way of identifying a need within our community beyond the fact that we have one senior housing and that's all that they can qualify. Okay. I'm interested in the St. Catharines project that you're currently doing. Was that a partnership contract with the local municipality, with region, or is it a project that is being driven by Niagara Regional Housing? And if so, how was the funding put together to bring this to fruition?
It is an owned unit, so it's directly managed and will be run by Niagara Regional Housing. Donna can speak a little bit about the funding because we did receive some provincial and federal funding for it. So that's why we moved forward with that. But we're also looking at some partnerships, and there's one that's going on in downtown St. Catharines with Pantera and Bethlehem Project. We are subsidizing some units in that building. So we don't directly manage that, but we're providing some subsidized units to help that project move along because it will have market rents, it will have some subsidized units, and it will have some affordable units in there.
Thank you.
You wanted to speak on the funding part of it?
Thanks.
So the Investment in Affordable Housing Program crosses many years, 5 years. And under that program, there was different categories where we can put funding towards. We were able to find land in St. Catharines, and we were able to, we had some money in our reserves, because under the programs, we had to come up with 25% of the total cost of each unit. So that we had we worked with the province on an agreement to fund the 85 units. They're covering 75%, we're covering 25%.
And just on the point,
please.
we picked affordable housing because that was a huge need. We're trying to get to that schedule, but it's like a 9-year wait in the city of St. Catharines, and the list was enormous with very little spots for that particular one. So we're trying to, from a board perspective, we're trying to balance our portfolio so that we have seniors, we have affordable housing between 19 and 64. So we're trying to manage all that at the same time with the funding that we have. So that's why that particular project. And the greatest need, we did an assessment study, and the greatest need was in St. Catharines, and that's why the building ended up going to St. Catharines, because we did look at other areas, and once we evaluated and once we were able to get some land that fit the criteria, then we moved forward with that particular project.
So you wanted to flip to a slide. I think you just hit one of the up or down buttons, sorry, on the keyboard. Maybe Mr. McDonald can help.
This one? Okay,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you.
I think this chart really helps, shows where the greatest need is when you're looking at double-digit numbers, and it was a single 16 to 54 that we're trying to address in terms of units, and the amount of people that are trying to get into those units for the amount of units that we had.
The
Thank
beauty
you.
of the Carlton Street project too is it's owned by Niagara Regional Housing. So a lot of the new development programs, when it goes to private developers, is usually a 20-year commitment. With some of the nonprofits, there's a 25-year commitment. This building could probably last us 60 to 70 years before it becomes a major expense of capital.
And just on the last two, like this building and Fitch Street, they are self-sustaining buildings, so they are not putting a greater burden on the budget that we have. So when we're building, we make sure that's encompassed in the financial numbers that we have. So moving forward, there's less, so we have newer buildings coming online that are cost efficient and are
Right.
sustainable, and we're trying to deal with some of the older buildings.
That's great. Thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if, maybe I'm reading too much between the lines, but if we as a community wanted to mount a project to address affordable housing, I guess from what I'm hearing, we have a strike against us in that the demand in Pelham is very low on the wait list, given, and that you are trying to prioritize where the spend is based on the need. We in our community don't really have a defined need. Your statistics don't allow us to almost argue that we have a need to build affordable housing. Could you comment on that?
Right now, the way we're working, because the funds are very limited, we're looking at different partnerships and different ways of collaborating with any of the stakeholders, like using the Pantera, using the Bethlehem project. There's a small, and I forget how many units that is.
In Welland,
No, St. Catharines.
Pantera?
The Bethlehem project.
I think 120.
So there's 120 units being built there. 20 of them are going to be subsidized by Niagara Regional Housing. So the housing is not just necessarily subsidized housing, but it's also providing housing for your residents. We're trying to manage it so that we can get some rent-geared income and some affordable housing in buildings that are being built. So we're trying to increase supply. So there's ways of looking at that creatively. So maybe the need in Pelham isn't the 120, but there might be 20, and if you build a building that has 120, using that as an example, there might be the need for market rents for the other 100 that are living in your community that want to move to an apartment style. So there's different ways that we're trying to work through it and be creative, because again, the funding is very limited, but we're willing to work with different partners and stakeholders.
And we're always looking for landlords. We have a rent supplement program. They can fill out an application. We're always looking for landlords to join our program. We'll only allow up to 25% of a building to be under rent supplement because of the concentration of poverty. We have the ability in Niagara Regional Housing to manage that because we have the resources, but a private landlord and a lot of the housing providers don't have that available to them.
Thank you. Councillor?
I think I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Councillor Papp, did you have something? Sorry.
I could go on for hours because I started out there in 2002. The key thing too, if you notice on the chart, if you look Pelham and that, those are communities where high demand for ownership of housing. So we don't know the data right now of people between the ages of 25 to 55, and in out of respect to them. Our seniors advisory group, Mr. Mayor, is undertaking an analytical study to figure out, if you want to call it the market study, of who do we have here who may not buy a house but would like to rent. So that will set the stage for that type of investment, so we'll be back to you on that. So right now, it doesn't look that way, but it actually does exist. But we have to quantify it.
Good. So it sounds
Okay.
like maybe that can be shared and.
That's going to
the
be shared,
information.
absolutely. It'll be done in about 6 months, and that data will then form a base by which we can determine whether we go down the ownership line or whether we go down the rental line or sort of a rent supplement like Councilor Kersey and I have talked about before. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any others? So I just have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, Council and our presenters. You made the comment about the rent geared to income and saying that you're always looking for more. So you said there's 750. What's the log jam? What's the thing that's keeping that from happening? Could you have more? What would be, if you could have your wish?
Well,
How many rent geared income would you have across Niagara?
rent geared to income is one of the most expensive programs to manage.
Okay.
So that's why we're moving away from rent geared to income to affordable housing, where it's a set amount. It makes it more affordable. It's
Okay.
just not giving the people the deep subsidy that they usually get. But under legislation, we're required to keep so many rent supplement units. A lot of landlords are pulling out because of the low vacancy rate. They're able to get more now from the market. People in Toronto, Hamilton, looking for places. Landlords are saying to us, we don't want to be part of your agreements anymore. So we need to find units, and there's no units being built in Niagara to be able to accommodate that, especially affordable units, because a lot of the requirements under many of the programs, they don't want you to pay a higher rent than the CMHC average market rent. And it's very hard to find units at those rents in Niagara.
So it sounds like it's kind of a fine balance. You don't want too many, but you also need.
There are programs now that are being announced by the federal and provincial government where they're looking for people to get developers to build multi-res again, because nobody's building it. So they're doing incentive programs. They're putting out applications to area municipalities and that on different on being able to maybe development charge waivers or different things. So they're putting the money forward, and they're encouraging to build, but they're allowing them to build at 175% of market rent. So that these people moving in can get the nicer, higher end ones, and that'll get people moving out of some of the buildings that we can afford to pay rent. Because on average, it's $6,000 a person in an RGI household a year to fund. So if you want to take 1,000 people off the wait list, that's $6 million a year, which is approximately 2% of levy.
Right. Okay, thank you. The other question then is about governance, and the board is changing. You mentioned in your presentation that there's 9 members. I think you're currently looking for an additional member. I don't know if you wanted to take this opportunity to give a little bit of a commercial to the community about that.
Sure. We had a different structure. Regional council wanted us to re-look at the structure, so we went through an exercise and came down to a board of 9. So with that board, we're filling those positions. 5 are councillors that are elected during the beginning of the term. And then there's 4 community members at large. 3 of those have been filled just recently through a council resolution. They end up approving the selection through the process. There is 1 vacancy. I know there's an advertisement going out for that. We're trying to get more individuals involved in that. So if there's anyone in your community interested, keep an eye out for that. Mr. Mayor, I can make sure you personally get a notice so that you can announce it at the next council meeting. Because it is coming up, so anyone out there with some good board capabilities, we're looking for that type of individual to sit on the board to help us through this process.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And certainly when regional council looked at those individuals, I think I said they were rock stars, and they are. So we look forward to that board starting and forming, and they need another rock star to join them so that we can really push forward, affordable housing and regional housing. So.
Yeah, it's an exciting time right now. There's a lot of money that's moving forward. A lot of strategies are coming in place. And right now, we're really looking at things creatively, trying to increase the supply, because that's our problem right now. Increase supply across the board will make a difference.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate you making the time, giving us specific statistics for Pelham, and helping us understand and answer some of those questions that we might have from residents, and also questions we might have ourselves. Thank you again for your presentation. We greatly appreciate it, and the whole team coming. Thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved that Council receive the presentation from Niagara Regional Housing for information. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much. So you don't have to stay for the whole meeting either, but you're welcome to.
This is a good council meeting.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Wendy, as well. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor D'Angela. Now we don't have any delegations, so we do now move to the report of Regional Councillor Beatty, who's unable to join us this evening. So it has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Ribbiak. Be it resolved that the January 2018 report submitted by Regional Councillor Beatty be received for information. Any questions about the report? And I can try and do my best to answer them. The Regional Council meeting, these were from the beginning of January, so we already did have that meeting. And no doubt Councillor Beatty will come forward with the report following this upcoming council meeting. Just the one piece of that I'd just like to highlight is a little bit about the Niagara Parks Commission. There was a motion that was approved at planning committee, that the region was trying to get involved a little bit into the redevelopment of the Millers Creek, which is along the Niagara Parks lands in the municipality of Fort Erie. We received an excellent presentation by Janice Thompson, the chair of Niagara Parks. And as a result of that and the discussion we had, the region really said, you know, we want to offer a hand out to help, as opposed to kind of come in and tell you what to do. So that was a nice result of the presentation that Ms. Thompson gave to Niagara Regional Council. If there's nothing else, I'm going to call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, colleagues. Now we move to adoption of minutes. There's a few minutes here. So it has been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the special council meeting of January 8th, the special council meeting of January 15th, and the regular council meeting minutes of January 15th. Did I say 8th twice? 15th and 15th. Are there any errors or omissions other than any that I just made now? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we move to consent agenda items to be considered in block. And I wondered if colleagues might have something you might like to lift for separate consideration. We'll start with Councillor Durley. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to lift 955 and 956, both resolutions from the town of Lakeshore.
955, 956. Okay, thank you. Any others? Can we, I was thinking maybe colleagues were thinking about this. Go ahead, Councillor Papp. We'll see
No,
if
I don't know,
along the
just
same
for
lines.
there's still some clarifying questions that I want to talk about 9.1.
Oh.
So I don't want to,
Okay.
yeah, I think we'll, go ahead, we'll get through it, yeah. It's nothing.
Okay. So that's the budget. You
The
have some
budget
questions
itself,
about that?
I have some questions about it
Okay.
that I want to get clear
All
about.
right, great, thank you. I wanted to highlight 952, 953, which are resolutions. I thought this was what you were going to talk about. Resolutions
yeah.
from the City of Thorold and the City of St. Catharines. And I just wanted to lift them and perhaps add just a little bit to them, instead of just simply receive them, actually send them a thank you note as we did before. So can we lift 952 and 953, please? Thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations therein contained be approved as applicable. 951, presentation of recommendations arising from the Committee of the Whole for council approval, and the recommendation is, be it resolved, the council approve the recommendations arising from the Special Committee of the Whole public meeting under the Planning Act, January 8th, and Special Committee of the Whole budget meeting, January 24th, 2018, as presented. Then we also have under 9.2 the minutes of approval from the committee for those two meetings. Then we have action correspondence of a routine nature. We have 941, which is Library Board, and it's, be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham received the Pelham Public Library Board correspondence of January 25th, 2018. The Council support the Pelham Public Library Board's endorsement of the recommendations in the OLA, that's the Ontario Library Association, pre-budget submission, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Ontario Library Association and the Federation of Ontario Libraries, local MPP, and the Minister of Tourism, Sport and Culture, and to the Pelham Library Board. We also have information correspondence items, and the resolution is, be it resolved that the following correspondence items be received for information. The first, number one, Association of Ontario Road Supervisors Employee Acknowledgement. 952, 953 have been lifted. The next is the City of Port Colborne resolution regarding the Niagara Parks Commission proposed expansion and enhancement, that we receive it for information. 955 and 956 have been lifted. 957, the Dorothy Rundling Airport, Niagara Central Dorothy Rundling Airport fourth quarter report, be received for information. 958, call for nominations for the T. Roy Adams Humanitarian Award, to receive it for information. 959, thank you letter from Leadership Niagara for participation in their program, receiving that for information. Information from Big Brothers Big Sisters and their Bowl for Kids' Sake, which is coming up on March 3rd. Thank you, Councillor. Receiving that for information. Then we have some information items from the region of Niagara. They are the 2018 interim levy dates and amounts, the protocol for planning services between the region and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and then some commentary regarding the Niagara Escarpment Plan agricultural policies. And then we have, finally, committee minutes for information. The Pelham Active Transportation Committee minutes of November 21st, 2017, the Summerfest Committee minutes of November 1st, 2017, and the Library Board minutes of November 22nd, 2017. I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Papp. Councillor Kersey, I know you also mentioned at the beginning you wanted to talk a little bit about the budget. Who wants to start? Okay. Councillor Kersey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make some general comments first and then go into an area that I'd request some further information about. As you know, and all of us sitting around this council are aware, we had a very robust discussion and debate around the budget, specific areas of the budget that caused some concern. But, Mr. Mayor, throughout that discussion, I do want to emphasize that none of the discussion was directed at being critical of staff, both on the front lines or in the management level.
Thank you.
It was directed at doing our job and being robust in our discussions of alternatives, such that we will come up with the best course of action for the citizens of this community. I think all of us around this table, senior staff included, take their responsibilities very seriously and apply ourselves to not only just the budget, but many things that we deal with. But specifically at the budget time, I think we try to be on our game as much as we can. It's rather interesting when you look at the media out there. On one hand, we've been recently criticized for being irresponsible and not paying attention to our job and spending money foolishly. And then when we take our responsibility very seriously and demonstrate it by a robust discussion, we get criticized for that as well. Finding we don't have enough money to spend, so we've got to find a way to avoid hiring people. And the community center is in the tank and going downhill, and so they're trying to find ways of circumventing spending money. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's interesting that on one hand we're criticized for not doing our job, and on the other hand, when we do our job, we're criticized for doing that. It's rather interesting, isn't it? Having said all of that, Mr. Mayor, I will say, and I was perhaps one of the more outspoken people during the budget discussion, and I don't apologize for that. I feel I'm doing my job. But I will support this budget. I will support it, trusting that staff will be judicious in the rollout of the budget. I am trusting that staff will monitor the rollout and the expenditures, and that they'll report back to council on a regular basis, particularly during the first year of the operation of the community center. I think it's very important that we, as the overseeing body, be informed at the ultimate level.
And not only that, it brings reassurance to the community that our senior staff and this council are doing their job to the utmost. So having said all of that, Mr. Mayor, as I said, I will support the budget. But I did have a question. There was discussion around the janitorial services to be provided in the new community center. And I wasn't sure, particularly looking back at the notes, where we ended up on that. My thought was that there was some direction given or an undertaking given that we would look at it, consider an RFP, and then report back to council with respect to that portion of the community center. So if staff could bring some clarity to that for me, that would be most helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Ottaway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the councillor's question, the staff will be putting together an RFP to test the market to see what a contracted rate would be versus wage costs to have that position or those positions in-house. And then once that work is done, we'll report back to council.
Okay, thank you. There was some comment of that, so I'm glad you asked the question and it's been clarified. So satisfied with the response?
Very satisfied with that,
That's
Mr.
great.
Mayor.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your comments as well about the budget process. I'm sure colleagues will comment as well before I comment any further. So I know Councillor Papp wanted to talk about the budget as well.
Sure. Again,
Go
concur
ahead.
with Councillor Kersey's comments about this is not meant, just a matter of clarification. Two things come up. One is, I do want to ensure, I think our Madam Director of Human Resources mentioned that there could be potential savings with benefits. So I expect the reporting back, because that's something over the past number of years, and it's not a criticism, it's with the regular reporting on where we are financially really helps us. So I'm trusting that will happen, Mr. CEO. The second thing that I want to talk about is in discussion with my colleague, and I know I didn't have a chance, Councillor Rebecca and Councillor Lane, but there has been another alternative suggested to us with respect to Poth Street. And I'm not going to elaborate now, but I will share it with you and the members of the staff of some other approach that we could use to settling that issue, and we will share that with you, Mr. CEO, and the engineer. And I want to be clear that if that is possibly be done, I don't expect any kind of answer tonight, but we'll be asking for a report on this option, which seems to be a tentative solution, an interim solution, until the more permanent one. So that's something that I want to ensure that is not lost. So on that scope, and then the other thing, at some point too, we can later on during the first quarter, just talk about, if you could clarify, not tonight, but some night, our whole compensation package again. What merit increases mean, what COLA mean, not COLA, but just explain to us and just explain what that amount is. I think there was $170,000, something like that, that's in the budget, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know the exact amount. How that actually is unfolded. So the general public, and it's not a critic, it's just how does it happen so that people aren't misconstruing, whether people get automatic adjustments, et cetera. So that's it. That's all I
Okay.
really have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ottaway wanted to comment on Poth Street, and I think there may be just some clarity on the last point. Mr. Ottaway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to respond to the councillor's questions, first of all, the benefits package, I know the HR director is looking very closely at that and has presented me some very exciting opportunities that we'll be pursuing. And she'll be coming back with a full report to council on any savings that are incurred there. So that work is underway. Second of all, Poth Street, again, the issue is the recommendation as it was presented by the consultants for a $1.2 million fix on that. It's unacceptable. It's not an acceptable solution, and I will say that again publicly to clear up any misunderstandings that may have been articulated in the media, that a $1.2 million fix for a culvert is not acceptable. So when we say that and how much it costs to recover that through taxation, it becomes very clear it's not the best solution that we can have. So what hasn't been articulated, I think, fairly is the fact that that doesn't mean that we've just shut the door and said we're not doing any work on that. We're saying that we've shut the door on that option because it makes no practical sense to spend that amount of money on a culvert replacement. I think everyone can agree to that. The question is, how can we find a solution that is affordable, that makes financial sense, and that meets the required legislation? And I can report to council that we are investigating opportunities to achieve that using the Drainage Act as opposed to the bridge legislation. And I'm not going to present too much information tonight because I'm not clear on the outcome of that, but we are investigating that quite closely, and we're optimistic that we'll be able to find an affordable and practical solution to this that will solve the problem, that won't cost the taxpayers $1.2 million, which again is or it's roughly 11% on our tax rate to service 9 parcels on a street. So we need to find better solutions to that than simply throwing that type of money at it, and that's what staff is doing. The Director of Public Works will be meeting with the drainage engineer, and then we'll be coming back. If there is opportunities, they'll come back. She'll come back with a report to council to outline those and to seek some direction on that one. And then quickly to comment on the last point, I'm sure the HR director will be happy to come in and give a presentation, but I will say that generally speaking, I believe we are the only municipality in Niagara that is 100% performance-based. So that is to say that no one in our organization gets a raise just simply because they put 12 months work in. Everyone in our organization from the top right down to the bottom is assessed on their performance and is paid on how they perform. And we're very excited and we're very proud of that fact. And that, again, it's a way to ensure that the taxpayer is getting the maximum dollar when employees are rewarded based on how much work and how they perform throughout the year, as opposed to simply a matter of seniority. And I'll just make that comment as a general statement to say that that's the overarching way that we compensate. However, the HR director, again, can give you some specifics on how we come up with that, how we award those, and how that's all done. That's something that I'm sure she'll present in coming weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. So COLA's out the window. It's performance that counts. And thank you very much. Councillor Pappen, any further ideas of Councillor Ribbiak and maybe some others?
Very quickly, that's exactly why it's something that I think the general public need to understand. If we are going performance-based, you've answered it correctly, so there's no misconceptions, no misrepresentations on how and why our staff get paid. That's the only reason I'm doing that, and I do it with the greatest respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. CAO, for answering those questions. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I guess first of all, let me just echo some of the things that have been said about both staff and about our process around coming to a budget. Everything we do here is done democratically, and I guess we need to understand that, right? A democratic process is one in which 50% or more of a group vote creates the decision, and 100% of the council supports that decision because the process is the one that we selected and it's the one that we agreed to. So absolutely, we can have discussions with regard to specifics in a budget. Different views can come forward. It's supposed to, and then there's supposed to be a vote, and there was, and the majority makes the best decision possible in the circumstances given the information that was shared. So that's just a general comment. The specific is with regard to POTH. I'm very interested, of course, in knowing that there's a solution because, as you recall, I was very interested in moving that item up, and my understanding of that item was that it wasn't red circled, it was relegated to 2019. So I'm just hoping that if there is a solution, we get to hear a report, and if there's a reasonable amount of money associated with that, we can find room in a budget that we democratically determined didn't have room for it, that we can somehow manage to do it. So do you anticipate, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, that should there be a solution to this problem, we can still manage to do something in 2018?
I don't know if you can answer that bit of a hypothetical question, Mr. CAO.
That would be the ultimate outcome, to have it resolved this year. However, I can't comment any further than that because I don't know what the conversation with the engineer is going to entail. I don't know what the solutions being proposed are, so I won't comment any further. But ideally, if we can make this project affordable and reasonable, we would certainly make a recommendation to have that work completed in this current fiscal year. If it's not possible, obviously we would defer it to the next year, and then hopefully council could reconsider the capital needed in the 19 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you, just to finish up, looking forward to hearing that report. I don't know how long it's going to take. What do you, through you, Mr. Mayor, what do we anticipate to be the timeline on on a report like that?
I'm not going to commit to that. I'll say I'd like to try and get something by the end of March.
Perfect.
That's good.
That's good.
And I'll leave it very wide open because I'm not clear on the exact nuances of the conversation nor the engineering behind it. That's all yet to be discussed. So we'll have a clearer picture. Maybe what I'll ask is the director just to keep council posted through the CAL report.
Great. Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate those answers.
Thank you. Others? Thank you very much, colleagues. Appreciate the conversation that we've had, and certainly it was a very good process. It was a bit different than what we've done in the past, in the sense of, in the past we looked at capital on its own, and then we looked at and approved that, and then we approved operating on its own. So this was a bit of a different approach, and we know that we still have water and wastewater to come up and deal with in coming weeks. So that was a very good process, and it's always good to have that discussion. So some people say, wow, it took you a few meetings to do that. Well, really it didn't, based on the fact that we had the two budgets combined in that way. And I think the discussion that we had, and still it's ongoing, as Councillor Kersey highlighted, with a particular nuance and request regarding cleaning and maintenance, et cetera, cleaning of the community center. But we really are at an important stage in the community when we're trying to forecast what's going to happen in the new Pelham Community Center. And so on behalf of council, I say I appreciate certainly the Director of HR leading that charge, and everyone around the table, from Mr. CAO and all of the senior management staff and others, getting really involved in that process and thinking about the best way for the myriad of options that you had, and rethinking the best way and rethinking the best way to provide those services to the community. And I think the plan that's come forward is actually one that can also be very flexible, and saying, you know what, if we don't get it exactly 100%, well, we have some flexibility in there as well, which is very keen. And it speaks to, Councillor Papp, one of the things that you speak about in terms of resiliency of a community. And so I see that the plan that's been put forward has resiliency in it, even to the fact, the request for additional information on that. So thank you for that. It is a budget of 3.5%, and staff continued, and I think there was a comment here, and they found that little bit extra so that we could help with the gypsy moth. That was an important issue, and they tweaked certain portions of the budget in order to accommodate that and come in at what council requested, which is the 3.5. The interesting piece is once you blend that, and we'll see where that shakes down once the education component comes in. I'm hearing that that's actually decreasing from the province because of all the growth across the province, and also the region, and they need to look at some of their policy tools when it comes to rates and ratios. One of the things that I've had a conversation with the deputy treasurer at the region, one of the things that they are going to be suggesting is to look at the multi-residential to see if there's a tax tool that can be used to encourage more multi-residential units and thereby reduce the tax impact on multi-residential. So we'll see what that interplay is between residential and multi-residential on that. So suffice to say, it looks like it's going to be, I said 2.5 blended. It might be somewhere between 2 and 2.5 in that area, 2.3. So we'll see what that comes in at. But roughly in that area, that would mean that we would be at inflation for at least the last decade. Looks like the last 12 years at inflation overall. So we'll wait for those numbers before that gets printed off in the newspaper. We'll see how those numbers kind of settle in as the rates and ratio conversation occurs at the region, and I'll keep you informed about that. So again, thanks very much to staff for putting together the budget, and for council colleagues for, as you articulated, Councillor Kersey, doing our job on the budget as we've always done on the budget, and bringing that budget in. So thank you. The budget vote is incorporated in the entire package for consent. So I'm going to ask and see if councillors have other items that they'd like to comment on in the consent piece. Obviously, save and accept the items the 4 items that we've lifted. Councillor Rivia?
Thank you. Just wanted to make a quick note. I know you've all caught it because you read every word of all of these documents, but the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungeling Quarterly Report makes reference to a project around rehabilitating the abandoned runway. And what I wanted to point out is that that is an initiative being undertaken by our tenant organization there, the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association that's there. They'd like to see it, and they are participating in a really meaningful way, and they are going to be doing fundraising in order to make sure that the costs can be kept well within limits, and they have undertaken to maintain the resultant runway thereafter. So I just wanted to make note of that because I think that's just an item of that people ought to find very interesting. I think that we have residents in that airport, tenants within that airport who don't just take, they also participate in a meaningful way about developing and giving. So I just wanted to make that note, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for highlighting that. Any others on any of the items under consent? I do want to acknowledge under 951, we received some information from the Association of Ontario Road Supervisors, employee acknowledgement, so congratulations to Bob Goodfield and Derek Young for your accreditation. Congratulations and thank you, and we would ask the director to perhaps pass along our thanks and congratulations to those 2 members of staff. And Councillor Papp, you did indicate that the Big Brothers Big Sisters Bowl for Kids' Sake is coming up on March 3rd. I think our team is going to, I was going to say perform, participate. Because we're going to be dressed like zombies? Is that what that is?
I do that all the
The
time.
theme is zombies.
Zombies, well,
Zombies.
I'm sure you felt that way after I bowled last year, like a zombie. So we look forward to the council meeting. We look forward to that. Careful. We look forward to that. So thank you very much. I'm going to call the question on the items under consent, including the budget. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we do have a couple of items that were lifted by Councillor Durley. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. The communication item 955 be received and the resolution contained therein passed by the Council of the Town of Lakeshore regarding stormwater management and drainage improvements be endorsed and supported, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Andrew Scheer, Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, Leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada, Ms. Elizabeth May, Leader of the Green Party of Canada, local MPs, the Honourable Kathleen Wynne, Premier of Ontario, the PC Leader of the Party of Ontario, Ms. Andrea Horvath, Leader of the New Democratic Party of Ontario, local MPPs, and the Town of Lakeshore. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This I think is a very important thing. We've experienced some flooding and basic costs to mitigate the flooding, and this resolution addresses that fact. And it's a common fact that weather patterns are changing. We're getting more severe weather events more often, and because of that, it's costing money, and it's costing time, and it's costing taxpayers grief, if not cost as well. Since we as municipalities are almost entirely relying upon property taxes, it's becoming more of a burden every day. And the Government of Canada and the Government of Ontario have recognized the need for infrastructure investments. Obviously, they've come forward and they've promised funding for these events. So what this resolution says is, be it resolved that the Government of Canada and the Government of Ontario be urged to immediately allocate infrastructure funding dedicated to municipalities for stormwater management and drainage improvements, which will help every municipality in this province. And in fact, if they can listen and help us with some of this, it certainly would put less of a burden on our budget and less of a burden on our staff to take care of all of these good things, and less of a burden upon our taxpayers who get affected from these severe weather events. So I'm urging my colleagues to vote in favor of supporting and endorsing this, and hopefully it gets some action.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor King, you seconded. Any comments?
I have nothing further to
Okay,
add.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you very much, Councillor Durley. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Durley has moved another motion. It's been seconded by Councillor King again, that communication item 956 be received and the resolution contained therein passed by the Council of Lakeshore regarding the marijuana tax revenue be endorsed and supported, and this resolution be forwarded to those parties listed in the Lakeshore resolution. Councillor Durley.
This is very similar to what we just discussed. In fact, Lakeshore, I think, has been very diligent in looking for alternate ways to receive some revenues. And since marijuana is going to become legal, there's going to be a lot of tax revenue that comes from it. What this resolution basically asks is that the provincial and federal governments, when they get these things, is to share some of that with municipalities. And I think that certainly we would be more than willing to accept any monies that would come that way. Again, that gives less of a burden to our taxpayers and gives us a little more room to operate and a little more revenue to do the jobs that we are supposed to do and that we need to do. So I'm asking once again for support of my colleagues to support and endorse this, and to urge the Government of Canada and Ontario to create a fund similar to the gas tax fund, really, which there, and the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, so new tax revenues generated from the sale of marijuana could be shared with municipalities.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others? I was intrigued by the approach and using the gas tax revenue and the idea that this council endorsed with AMO when of the extra % on the HST, which all the parties have said no to, but this with a new revenue tool as opposed to the HST, which is an existing revenue tool, this could be a real opportunity for addressing some of the concerns that certainly Councillor Durley you raised, but also the Lakeshore Council has raised. So thank you very much for raising it, and I'm going to call the question on the supporting endorsing the resolution. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that motion carries unanimously as well. Thank you, Councillor Durley. The two items I had lifted with your support, item 952 and 953. These are the resolutions that were passed and approved, or considered and approved, both at the City of Thorold and the City of St. Catharines. The recommendation that was put forward in the consent agenda was to simply receive them. Council will recall that last meeting we also sent a thank you note to the City of Port Colborne when they first adopted their recommendation. So I wondered if I might have a mover and a seconder to not only receive these letters, but also ask the clerk to send thank you letters to the councils on our behalf. So if Councillor Ribyak would move that, and Councillor Kersey looks like he will second that. I'm going to call the question unless there's further discussion. I know that other communities will be looking at this as well. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously as well. Thank you. So we look forward to, thank you, Madam Clerk, for accepting that responsibility to send thank you notes to our colleague councils. We now move to no report from members of council. I'll have a report next meeting. I wanted to keep it a little bit shorter because of the presentations. So we now move to presentation and consideration of reports. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the council receive the Community Planning and Development Report with regard to 1120 Hay Street, the Pelham Arena Community Co-Design, and the recommendations therein be approved as follows. The council proceed with undertaking an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment in preparation of urban design guidelines to implement the preferred plan for the proposed redevelopment of 1120 Hay Street, Pelham Marina lands, and the staff be directed to initiate the planning approval process for the preparation of an official plan and zoning bylaw amendments and the urban design guidelines for the preferred plan for the proposed development as well. Comments, questions regarding this? We'll start with Councillor Durley. No doubt there'll be others, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is, having sat in on the charrettes and having listened to the comments from the public and from everybody involved, our planning people were very active in that, and the consultants that helped. This is a win-win situation in that we're maintaining and actually enhancing some green space and the park space that everybody felt was very important, and it also is giving an opportunity for some development, for more people to be using this park space and that. So I think it's an excellent idea, and I certainly will be supporting that. In order for this to happen, we need to make the changes to the official plan and the all of the dot the i's and cross the t's so that all this can happen. In fact, after the old arena will be decommissioned, and that's when things will happen. But up until that time, now is the time to get prepared for the future. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any others? Councillor Papp?
I most respectfully understand what Councillor Durley is saying, but I will not support this report. I think the timing is not right. I think we should wait. It was my understanding in discussion with the residents in that area there would be another public meeting. And what I read is that there was some public speak, or whatever the case may be. So in essence, I can't support this movement right at this stage, at this time. I would like to wait until we have solidified our plans out on East Fonthill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Others? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an excellent plan. It incorporated the input from the surrounding community. It respects the type of housing that borders on the block of new development, in that we have single-family dwellings abutting on to single-family dwellings. It captures a significant portion of green space and park space. And yet it meets some density needs and provides a variety of housing categories that this community could utilize. With respect to further public input, and with all due respect to my colleague, what we are saying here is that we're going to undertake a public process.
Right.
We are going to undertake an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, both of which are public processes, both of which will allow public input, both at the podium, but by letter, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm quite comfortable in the fact that the public will have at least one more opportunity to give us their views on this development. And we have said all along, when the question of what to do with the old arena lands arose, we have said that we will take the views of the public into consideration. I think we have up to this point in the way that we've managed the charrettes and the reports, and I think we'll further manage that as we go through the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment. So I will certainly support this motion and move ahead with the planning as proposed by our consultants. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any others? I'm just gonna comment as well. Councillor Durley spoke about attending those co-design sessions, and he was able to attend all of them. I attended a couple of them, not all of them. But I was very, very impressed with the consultants and with staff working together with the community. It really was a co-design, and is a co-design. Folks that I've talked to since the design of the process have said to me, they've come up to me, offered, and said, we really like that plan because we really felt we were a part of that process, that the design that's before us is maintaining that green space, that strip that we've always had, and actually some of the redevelopment that's there. They're excited about the trail that's going to go in, the potential for a what's that called?
Splash pad.
Splash pad. Thank you very much. In the future, the idea that that park is going to be there and maintained, but also development that's very similar. Some of the concerns we had from the community was, very high-rise development, looking into my backyard, those kind of things. And that's not part of the plan for the development. It is a development that would integrate with the community. I noticed in looking at the plan that staff have put forward, and when going out for this public process, that it actually has, I'm just trying to look for it here, the way the property is, it's actually going to lock in the plan that was preferred by the community. Just the way in which it's configured, there's not straight lines here that are being proposed. There it is on page 11, I guess, of the report, in the way in which it's going to be proposed. So the green space is going to be maintained around the edges that are used to that green space. And so look forward to that public process. And I think that's important, that it is a public process moving forward, and we'll consider any and all feedback. In terms of, as we always do at official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, in terms of the timing, I think, why wait? To have a facility there that we know that staff are gearing up to move out, and I think a lot of residents that back onto this property are keen on getting the staff and the activities out of that area, because they can then turn into a residential area. They're going to be prepared to move out, and so why not have this asset and redevelop it? And also, people have invested. The community has invested in the arena. How else do you get that revenue, that investment from the community out of it, other than redeveloping it, selling it, having it redeveloped? So I'm very supportive of initiating the process, and looking forward to the community feedback. Unless there's anyone else that would like to comment, I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next report has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the Council receive the Ministry of Transportation Community Transportation Grant 2017 Program Concept Sheet, and the staff be authorized to apply for Community Transportation Grant Program funding. Questions, comments? Very pleased to see that the report and the funding is going to look to extend the routes and partner with Pelham Cares even further. Also the potential for evening bus service, and somehow working to coordinate that. I think maybe in the future, Council, we may want to, I think we've done this before, I was having some conversations with some folks at the region. We may want to have a resolution from this council talking about, making sure that our program, that our transit service, the regional transit service, comes into Pelham at the Pelham Community Center, which is going to be that hub. So I did briefly speak to the director about that, and I know I'll speak to her further about that and see if perhaps council may want to have a resolution in the future when the timing works out. But very supportive of this. Unless there's anyone else that would like to comment, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we move to bylaws, and there are a few. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor Lane. Be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read it first, second, third time, and do pass the same, and the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the following bylaws. Bylaw 3962 being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 89-2000 being a bylaw for regulating traffic and parking on highways under the jurisdiction of the Town of Pelham, and to amend Bylaw 3505 being a bylaw to establish a system for administrative penalties respecting the stopping, standing, and parking of vehicles. The second, Bylaw 3963 being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 3578 confirming various appointments to boards, commissions, and committees of the Town of Pelham, and to remove members from the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee, Schedule G, to appoint members to the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee, and to appoint members to the Pelham Summerfest Committee. And Bylaw 3964 being a bylaw to adopt the estimates for the Town of Pelham for its own operations for the year 2018. Bylaw 3965 being a bylaw to amend to adopt an amendment to bylaw 3259, the Town of Pelham Planning Area Amendment 5, EF Low Density Residential. Bylaw 3966, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of agreement with the Town of Pelham and Her Majesty the Queen in the right of the Province of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario, Ontario Municipal Commuter Cycling Program 2018, and to repeal and replace bylaw 3920. And finally, bylaw 3967, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1136 as amended for lands located on the south side of Port Robinson Road and west of Rice Road, municipally known as 166 Port Robinson Road, legally described as Thorold Part Township Lot 171, from the site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 267 zone and site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 274 zone to a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 267 zone. And this is Hurt Inc., Upper Canada Consultants. Questions, comments from colleagues on any of the bylaws? Interesting amendment and suggestion, Chief, on the valid stickers, so thank you very much for bringing that forward. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We do have an in-camera item, and it has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following committee of the whole meeting scheduled for later this evening. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. We'll now take a brief 5-minute recess. Thank you.